Okay, welcome to this week's podcast, the first of our podcasts. And this week we're going to have a look at why every speaker and expert needs to publish a book and how that will help elevate your career. So welcome to the podcast this morning, Dixie.
Hey, Brad, how you going?
I'm good, thanks. It's looking like a very exciting topic today. Books, obviously something you know very well because you're in the publishing industry, where for me, books are all about reading, writing, and using them to grow my business. It should be an interesting discussion today because we'll get two really different viewpoints from an expert point of view. Hopefully that can help some of our experts and speakers who are listening to the podcast. I've got a few bullet points and I think we probably could start there. My first one is that when you write a book, it sets you apart from probably 99% of the people in your industry, because they'll never finish a book.
That's so true. So I lose track of the number of people who come to me and say, I've finished writing the manuscript, but I know it needs work, but I don't know what to do with it. For many of them, they just pop it in a bottom drawer and that's the end of it. For years, when I hear people say, it took me 5 years to write it, it probably took a lot less time, but a lot of that time it was just ignored in the bottom drawer.
Oh, absolutely. I think I've probably, partially written about 15 books. Published 2. I've got another one that I'm working on another 2 that I'm actually working on the side, one on leadership and one on selling and producing courses. We're always encouraged as experts to produce a book, but it really does require quite a considerable amount of focus. From my perspective, having worked with you personally, the guidance is also a big thing because you think you know what you're doing, but until you have a structure, all these ideas are everywhere. Once you have a structure, you can lay them into alignment. It makes it so much easier to write.
It was interesting because you and I have been talking about your book for years, right? Finally, I think I said to you early this year, give it to me and I will fix it. I could see that you were stuck in the same way that so many authors are, where you knew you needed it, but you'd started so many parts, you'd written so much, but often we have to unpack what you've written to take it forward and make it work. It was great to finally wrestle that off you and start to pull all of the great parts into place. What I loved was that you had spent so much time thinking about it and working on it that you already had a lot of great content. For me, I like to start with the draft. So if you're going to develop a new keynote, workshop series, or a book, you map it out in such a way that the book is well structured, it's then well edited. You've had someone, a professional, presumably either a book coach like myself or an editor, go through it and work out what's workable and what's not. It was fantastic to see that come to fruition for you. There was not as much work as there might have been if we had started with that intention way back at the beginning, like 2 or 3 years ago, because you had already spent so much time putting parts together. Where most authors and speakers come undone, whether they're writing a new presentation, workshop, or a book, is getting that structure to work in a way that's reader or user friendly. We tend to always forget that there are ways our audience will grab the information, take it, digest it. And it may be different than how we think. Getting that structure right at the beginning means that you're starting with the end in mind. You start with the draft, and from there you can make anything happen, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most experts are good at producing content. Sometimes they're confused about how to structure the content or which content's the best. You can do a video, an article, or a book. But in the end, from my perspective, producing a book is about its recognition and gives you credibility of your expertise. So it's a bit like having a master's degree versus having a diploma in something. It really sets you apart from other people in your own industry.
It's interesting you say that. I started a couple of years ago working on a workshop, an online program, and I already had a number of books out about publishing and marketing, but I hadn't done anything specifically around what I ended up doing this workshop series on. And so it was an online program, and I finally realized that in order to market it, the easiest way to market it was to put it out as a book first and have the book lead people to the online program rather than the other way around.
Absolutely.
And so that made a big difference to me. I ended up taking a lot of that content. The book is called Start with the Draft, and it was about mapping out the process. And often when you're getting your content in order, you have to stop and think about what is my process What is my process for writing? What is my process for drafting out the content and where everything goes? What is the process for then developing that content into something that is a book? And again, I think if you start with the book concept, it makes the other parts a lot easier rather than trying to start with a workshop and then create a book. That's what I learned by default.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing about having written the recent book, Run Towards the Flames, was that I didn't realize how much content I was going to get out of the book once the book was up there, just being able to use it for little chunks and little quotes and videos based on themes that came through. There was just so much stuff that I didn't realize I was going to be able to do. That was the biggest thing for me. You've got so many great ideas that you want to share with the world that they all rattle around in there, and, one by one, they eventually come out. Whereas if you can pour it out onto those pages, it creates this succinct amount of content. That then you can go, okay, that one was really good. I've had people say to me, I've made some notes out of your book. I'm going to use that in my speech and quote you. It's good to see that someone read it and went, that really hits home. I think I should share that with someone else.
I think one of the things that you've just touched on, which is one of my favorite things about people doing books, is that you end up writing out your thoughts as opposed to when you're just standing on stage and saying a particular saying. When it's in a book and you feature it in your book, let's find the Bradisms or the Dixie-isms or the Tim-isms. Let's feature those in the way the book is laid out and typeset so that they do stand out. And when you're going through the editing process, the editor will sometimes say, let's just make this a little bit tighter. I remember Jerry Seinfeld once famously said, if I can spend a whole day taking a 9-word sentence and making it 8 words and it works better, that's a day well spent. When we give ourselves permission to work in our content because we're doing a book, we do spend more time identifying what are our isms, our own things that we can share. And so that can be a really good side benefit of the book. And then when you've created the book, or you're standing on stage and you've got your isms identified and curated really well, then you can feature them into really brilliant memes or slides and things like that. And you own those quotes and sayings.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I suppose one of the sayings I noticed that I came out with in my book was, we win or we win. As a firefighter, we win or we win. We can't back down. We've got to solve the problem. Yeah. And I've noticed that I use that when I sign people's books. Someone will say, can you sign the book for me? So I'll just write, we win or we win. And it's great to have that little thing that's mine. I'm sure someone said it before, but to me, it's something that it's me. So moving along, I've heard a few things. And one is that in some places, having a book actually increases your speaking fee. So as an expert, you get paid more. And, that's something that goes around a little bit. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
I think it comes down to how good the content is that you're sharing. When you sit and write a book, you really dive into your own content. And if you're making sure that your book marries up with the speaking that you want to do or the workshops you want to do, then your content is much more polished. As a speaker, you are more polished with your content. So therefore, the more polished you are as a speaker, the more fees you can charge. But I think there is also this perception by people who book speakers that if we've done a book, we have that much more authority on our topic, especially if we've had good reviews on our book, if we've had bestseller status, if our book has been quoted in specific other places or by other experts, we have that extra elevated status. And I think that is also where we then become more confident saying, my fee is now this, and this is how I can command that fee, rather than thinking, oh, I'm just going to say that I've got a book. I think when we have gone through that journey of developing a great book, a book that has proven itself by reviews and sales and commentary, we are more confident at saying, you know what, my speaker fee is now this.
Yeah, I think we've got to distinguish between books and books as well, because, there's a lot of people running around saying, write a book in 24 hours, which I'm sure is possible if you don't sleep, but I can't say much to the quality of it. And I get that it takes a single idea and gets it out of your head and all that. But yes, there's work involved in producing a good book, a book that people are going to read and it's going to change their thoughts and all those sorts of things. Now, it doesn't have to be long. It's the way the content is, the content that's actually kept in the book when you go through the editing process, rather than just blurting out some stuff and going, I've got a book. I'm an expert.
I call them desk thumpers, and I'm a desk thumper free zone. I think that there are many $1 million speakers out there running around with $10 business cards disguised as books. And for me, because the industry as a whole has become so much more discerning, people want good quality content. They don't want something that's all written by AI. They don't want something that reads like a report or it's just full of bullet points. They want something that has been well developed and written, that it's fit for purpose, that it has a good reader flow and friendliness to it. So you can write a book in 24 hours, but the reality is, can you write a good quality book in a short period of time?
Yeah.
I can write a reasonable first draft inside of just a few weeks. By a reasonable first draft, I mean, it might be 20,000, maybe 30,000 words. It'll be the bones of the product. It's like saying the architect can map out the plan and the builder can put the framing up quickly. But then you still have to go back, fill in all the extra parts, review, make sure that it is really good quality, put it out to beta readers and people that are going to give you feedback and say, yes, this is fit for purpose. Because if you're going to write a book just to say you wrote a book, so what? If you're going to write a book that is going to fit really well into your marketing ecosystem, you have something that is quality, that is worth putting out there, that you will still be proud of a few years down the track. Write a book that's really good and solid and has brilliant content in it, and you'll always be proud of it, and you'll find writing a second book is easier and more viable as well.
Absolutely. When I wrote my first book, The $1 Billion Blueprint, which is about digital marketing, I wrote it myself, I self-published it, and I didn't use an editor, as opposed to this time when I wrote Run Towards the Flames. And I suppose it's a different quality book, but then it was an entirely different content. But one of the things I discovered that I quite enjoyed about having a book was that probably 95% of my speaking career, I've spoken for free. So that means that, I sold my services off the back of my speaking, but I needed to pay for the ability to get to the place and to stay there overnight or whatever it needed to be. And having a book, at $20 a time doesn't take too many books to actually cover the price of plane fares. And I reckon there's probably 5 or 6 speeches where I sold enough books to cover my plane fare and cover the cost, even if I didn't sell anything. So it's really handy just having it anyway, because it is that little bit of extra income that gives you a little bit of flexibility without tapping into your business funds to help you get in front of an audience.
You're right. And I know that we're going to have another episode further down the line, so I won't get into this too much today. But there are ways you can use your book to really cement extra income from your speaking and inspire the people who are going to be in your audience, for example, to buy the book or to be gifted the book as part of the fee. So we will talk more about that further down the line. But there are ways that you can still maximize, even being a speaker who doesn't necessarily charge a lot, to get value.
Well, I know for me, I would look at everything from a marketing perspective, because that's me. I'm a marketer. And one of the things is when you're on stage, you can either be talking and educating people, or you might be just selling, or you might be combining those factors together. But one of the things about having a book available is that people can take a bit of you home. So even if they're not ready to take on your services, or they don't want to buy your product if you're selling a product, or you're just speaking from stage and being paid, having a book there allows you to give a piece of you to them and say, look, you enjoyed this, here's my book. Now, obviously they're buying it from you, but at least they go away and have time to gestate on that information they've heard on stage, which of course then the next speaker comes on and all that. But if they got your book, they can sit on the plane on the way home and sit there and read through it, and kind of brings it all back again. And I think, for me, that was really important as well, is that ability to take a piece of you home.
The thing too, and this comes back to the quality issue, if you have got a speech that is tied into your book, or your book is tied into your speech, that they mirror each other, and the book is quality, compared to some of the other books that you might get from a conference. So if it's a quality book, you're more likely to keep it. If it's been autographed, for example, by the author, it's something that you're less likely to lend out to your friends because you might not get it back. So you'll value it more. Having good quality content that expands on what you've been speaking about. If you think about a book, it's probably an average of 4 to 6 hours worth of content if you read it out. If you're speaking for 30 minutes to an hour, you're covering such a tiny portion of what you would otherwise be sharing. So someone wanting to take the book home because it looks good and it reads well, then they will read it on the plane. If they were inspired by what you started to tell them in your presentation, then they are going to feel great about, let's get some more of that. And so, yes, getting on an airplane and seeing someone reading your book, that's a really big buzz for an author.
As you said, you're only taking a tiny chunk of that information when you're on stage or presenting to a boardroom or wherever you are. The book holds so much more. My speech, Run Towards the Flame, looks at one tiny thing that causes major changes in how you deal with rapid change. And it's just a paragraph in the whole book.
Yeah.
It's a very impactful piece. It puts people into your marketing funnel in a way. You might not be collecting their email address or getting their credit card, but you are in their mind. They're more likely to follow you on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, depending on what platforms you use. They then fall into that funnel aspect of your business where you can develop that fan following. Maybe down the track, they will buy more stuff from you, or maybe they'll invest in a course or get you in to do some training with their staff. You never know. You can always put some lead generation ads inside your book. You should have at least a page in there. I know Alan Peace, when I was talking to him one time, he was saying, like, because his books were being, copied, that he actually put ads in his books. With the ads, he would attract people to his website and capture their information. It's just that special offer in the book can make a big difference, even if you're not actually selling to them.
What I want to do is, because that whole concept of having a call to action and breadcrumbing through the book is a really big area we can cover in another episode. It's entirety. But if you have something that goes all the way through your book that leads people to the end, that has that call to action page, that takes people to your website, that is funneling. That is making sure people know exactly how you can help them, what you can do for them, and how you can corral them into getting more of you when they finish the book. One of the things I talk about a lot when I'm working with an author is, what do you want to have happen when people read the book? How do you want this to impact on your career as the author? But how do you want this to impact on the people reading the book? How do you make that all come to life? That's another great topic we can talk about another day in more depth, but there's no point in writing a book that doesn't have some kind of now do this or now get that.
Oh, absolutely. And look, from my perspective as a speaker, having a book is important. They do weigh a lot when you're trying to fly somewhere. So you quickly work out how much your book weighs and packs a 10. But you can have it published and shipped directly to the event organizers, the venue or your hotel. You can certainly get around that once you get your head around the process, which isn't too hard. Having a book as an expert is just so important when it comes to growing your business. I really, truly believe that. And I don't think people really understand it until they've done it. And when they finally have that book in their hand and they're holding it up, you feel so proud, number one, something that you've accomplished. Number two, you've always got something that you can give a piece of yourself away. And number three, you do stand out. And that does make the difference between you and possibly someone else that someone might be looking at hiring.
And number 4 is that if you have gone through the process of writing a book and your content is really crystal clear.
Oh, yeah.
So
I agree.
Put together a workshop or
I was launching into a new area talking about leadership. It absolutely solidified my own thinking as a leader. And it made me stronger because I realized I did know this stuff and that I did have strong opinions about it, but they weren't, outside the normal realm. It's just that I have a specific way of looking at, leadership and applying that in a business as opposed to applying it on the fire ground. The lessons that I realized that I'd learnt along the way were so powerful and that I really wanted to share them with people. And once I'd written them, they just flowed out. If I suddenly, it's like, boom, all this content was already, laid out inside there for me instead.
Absolutely. 4 great points on why you should have a book.
Yeah, absolutely. So For everyone listening in, I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. It's our first episode, and we're obviously going to continue on. So I hope you enjoyed the expert's journey and our topic today, which is why every expert needs a book. I look forward to catching up with you in the next one. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe and share it with other experts so that they too can learn something.
Thanks, Brad. That's been a great conversation. We obviously have so much more to talk about. So let's keep this going.
Absolutely.